I've always been a tech guy. Maybe it's because I grew up obsessed with computers, or maybe it's just the way the world is now. Everything's online, everything's automated. So when I moved into my condo in Chicago, one of the first things I did was upgrade my security. Smart locks, smart cameras, everything connected to my phone. No more fumbling for keys. No more wondering if I locked the door on my way out. Just convenience, control, peace of mind. I could check my front door's activity log from anywhere. I could let delivery people drop off packages inside while I was at work. I even had a live camera feed pointed at the entrance, so I always knew who was coming and going. It felt good to be that secure, that aware of everything happening in my home. It wasn't until December that I realized something was wrong. It was a Tuesday night, early December, freezing cold outside. I was home alone, curled up on my couch with a blanket, mindlessly scrolling on my phone. I had some true crime documentary playing in the background, but I wasn't really paying attention. Just another quiet night. Then, my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was a random email or news alert. But then it buzzed again, and this time I recognized the notification sound. It was from my smart lock app. I looked down at the screen. Front door unlocked. That didn't make sense. I hadn't touched the app and I was the only one with access. I clicked into the app and saw the status screen. The lock was disengaged. My stomach did this weird little flip, but I shook it off. Probably a glitch. That happens with smart devices sometimes, right? I pressed the lock button on my phone. From across the room, I heard the metallic click of the deadbolt sliding back into place. I finally breathed out, unaware I'd been holding my breath so long. Then my phone buzzed again. Front door unlocked. This time, I sat up. That wasn't a glitch. I tapped the lock button again. I heard the click as the door locked. And then, seconds later, buzz. Front door unlocked. A weird, jittery feeling crawled up my spine. I looked toward the door. It was still shut. No sign of movement, no sound. Still, my hands felt clammy as I pulled up the activity log. It showed 3 unlock attempts in the last 2 minutes, but not by me. And I was the only one who should have had access. Something was wrong. I grabbed my tablet from the coffee table and pulled up the security camera feed. My breath was so heavy as I waited for the footage to load. At first, I saw nothing. Then I noticed it. There was someone standing just off to the side of the door, almost completely out of the camera's view. A hooded man. Standing there, and in his right hand, he was holding a phone. I stared at the screen, my pulse slamming in my ears. The guy wasn't moving, he was just standing there. Then he lifted his phone slightly. A second later, my phone buzzed. Front door unlocked. I jumped off the couch. My heart going a mile a minute as I ran to the door, grabbing the deadbolt and shoving it into place manually. I turned back to the security feed. The man hadn't reacted. He hadn't flinched. He was still just standing there, holding his phone. And just when I thought he might never move, finally he turned around and walked away. I stayed awake the whole night. Someone had figured out a way to hack my lock and had stood there, testing it. By morning, he was gone, but the fear wasn't. I had this gnawing feeling, this itch in my brain that I needed to check the activity logs again. And that's when I saw it. The unlock attempts hadn't started last night. They'd been happening for weeks. It never happened during the day, just late at night. Some weeks barely anything, some weeks nonstop, always while I was home. I had ignored the notifications, assuming they were glitches, but they weren't. I called the smart lock company immediately and told them what happened. The guy on the other end of the line sounded uneasy. "That's not possible," he said. "Only an admin can unlock your door." Yeah? Well, someone did. Are you sure you didn't share access with a friend or roommate? No, man, I live alone. Silence. Then, I'd recommend resetting your system immediately. I didn't just reset it. I removed the lock completely and replaced it with a traditional deadbolt. That night, for the first time since I was a kid, I wedged a chair under the doorknob. A week passed. I tried to breathe, to let it go, to convince myself that I was safe now. Then, one night, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed. A notification. Even though the smart lock was no longer installed. Front door unlocked. I wasn't home. I was miles away, and I live alone. I called the police. They checked the building's security footage. It showed a hooded man standing outside my unit at 2 a.m., but it didn't show how he got in. There was no forced entry, no tampering with the old lock, just a man who had somehow walked inside. They never caught him, and thank God I never saw him again. I never thought losing a key would lead to the worst night of my life. I run my own business, so my schedule is all over the place. Some nights I come home early, some nights I work late. My wife, Laura, works a normal 9 to 5, so most evenings she's already home when I arrive. That week had been chaotic. I'd been juggling deadlines, bouncing between meetings, and at some point, I lost my spare house key. It wasn't a big deal. I still had my main one, but it nagged at me. I didn't like the idea of it just being out there somewhere. So on Tuesday afternoon, I called a locksmith to change the locks. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the way he acted. The guy arrived in a nondescript white van, which was already weird because every other locksmith I'd used had a company logo on their truck. His uniform was just a black polo and jeans, no branding, no name tag. He was friendly, polite, and a little too chatty. Losing a key is the worst, huh? He chuckled as he started working. Happens more than you'd think. I just nodded, watching him drill into the old lock. You live alone? He asked. That should have been my first red flag. No, my wife's here, I said. It wasn't a lie. Laura was home, working in her office upstairs. The guy nodded like he was filing that information away. Then he asked, You work late hours? Something about the way he phrased it sent a weird feeling crawling up my neck. Sometimes. He took his time installing the new lock. Too much time. What should have been a 15-minute job dragged into 40 minutes. When he finally finished, I paid him and he left. I shut the door and double-checked the lock. Something about him had bothered me, but I told myself not to be dramatic. Then, at exactly 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of someone trying to open the front door. At first, I thought it was just a bad dream. Then it happened again, a slow rattle of the handle. I sat up in bed, trying to listen. The house was completely silent. No footsteps, no voices, just that soft testing of the lock. Suddenly, a click. I turned my head just in time to see the bedroom door creak open. And someone stepped inside. He was tall, dressed in black, wearing a ski mask. And he had a gun. The second I moved, he raised it, pointing it straight at me. Don't, he said, his voice calm. Too calm. Get up, slowly. I looked at Laura. She was still asleep. My heart pounded as I obeyed, raising my hands. Go to the bathroom, he ordered. Please, I started. The bathroom, now. My legs didn't want to move, but I moved. He followed behind me as I stepped into the small master bathroom. Wake her up, he said. What? Wake her up, now. I turned toward Laura, my hands shaking as I touched her arm. Laura, I whispered, wake up. She stirred, blinking in confusion. What's... Then she saw the gun. Her breath caught in her throat, eyes wide with terror. "Get in the bathroom," the man repeated, taking the key out of the lock. I hesitated. "Please, just close the freaking door," he ordered. I pulled Laura into the bathroom and shut the door. We heard him locking the door from outside and then his footsteps moving back toward the bedroom. We were trapped. Laura was sobbing silently as I pressed my ear against the door, listening. Drawers opening. Cabinets rummaged through. He was going through our stuff. I reached for my phone, but it was gone. So was Laura's. He had taken both of them. I had no way to call the cops. No way to do anything except wait. For what felt like hours, we sat there in silence, listening to the man tearing through our house. Suddenly, everything went still. No movement, no sound. Like the whole world froze. We stayed in that bathroom until daylight. Laura was shaking in my arms, her breathing uneven. I kept listening, waiting for something. A sound, a footstep. Nothing. Finally, around 7 a.m., we heard something. A knock on the front door. I didn't move. Then, a familiar voice. Our neighbor. "Hey, are you guys okay?" I yelled through the door that we were locked in the bathroom. He ran upstairs and unlocked the door. We stepped out of the bathroom, still shaking. The front door was wide open. The living room was trashed, drawers dumped, papers scattered. And our phones? Gone. Our neighbor Greg stood there looking worried. "I saw your door open when I came out for my paper," he said. "Figured I should check." I couldn't even speak. My hands were shaking as I grabbed Laura and pulled her into me. Greg called the cops. When they arrived, they told us what I already knew. There was no forced entry. Whoever broke in had a key. I told the police about the locksmith and the weird questions, but they never found the man. I had the locks changed again, this time by a legitimate company. I installed deadbolts, security cameras, motion detectors, and I carry a gun now. To this day, I don't know if he picked us randomly or if he had been watching us for longer than we knew. I've lived in my house for 4 years, and even when my husband traveled for work, I never felt unsafe. It was a nice suburban neighborhood in Raleigh, North Carolina. The kind of place where people actually knew their neighbors and left Halloween decorations up until Christmas. But looking back now, I wonder if I was just too comfortable. If maybe, for a long time, someone had been watching, and I had no idea. It was a Thursday evening in late October. The house was quiet, my son Daniel was asleep upstairs, and my husband was on a business trip in Atlanta for the next 3 days. Out of nowhere, the power in the kitchen cut out. The fridge hummed, then died. The microwave, the coffee maker, all dark. I sighed. Not again. It had happened once before, and I assumed it was just the old wiring acting up. I wasn't about to go flipping breakers in the dark, so I searched for a local electrician. One of the first results had a same-day repair option. 5-star reviews. Seemed legit. I called and a man answered on the second ring. "Elite Electrical," he said. "This is Adam." I explained the issue. He was polite, professional, and said he could be at my house within 30 minutes. Everything felt just perfect, until it wasn't. 25 minutes later, a white van pulled into my driveway. There was no company name on the side, which struck me as a little odd, but I didn't question it. When I opened the door, a tall, thin man in his late 40s stood there. He wore a plain blue work shirt, no logo, no name tag. "Adam?" I asked. He nodded and gave a tight smile. "Yes, ma'am. Power outage in the kitchen?" I let him in, and he immediately got to work, checking outlets, flipping switches, muttering to himself. At first, everything seemed normal. He moved fast, knew exactly what he was doing. But then he started taking pictures. At first, I assumed they were for records. But after a while, I noticed he wasn't just photographing his work. He took pictures of the doors, the windows, the hallway leading upstairs. Something about it made my stomach twist. "Why are you taking so many pictures?" I asked, forcing a light laugh. His fingers hovered over his phone. Then he shrugged. "Just for my reference." And then he kept working. I should have told him to leave, but I didn't. 15 minutes later, he said he was finished. I paid him in cash. He claimed his company had issues with card payments. Another weird detail I ignored. As he stepped outside, I felt a sudden need to watch him leave. So I stood at the window and waited. He got into his van, but he didn't drive away immediately. He sat there for too long. I didn't move, barely even breathed. Finally, after what felt like forever, he pulled out of my driveway and drove away. I should have felt relieved, but that night, as I got into bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. And at 3 a.m., I found out why. A loud thud woke me. I sat up fast, my heart racing. At first, I thought it had come from the neighbor's house, but then I heard it again, a soft shuffle, a chair dragging from downstairs. I turned toward the baby monitor on my nightstand. The small screen glowed in the darkness, showing Daniel fast asleep. I reached for my phone and opened the security camera app. The cameras were offline. Every single one. I barely had time to process what was happening before I heard it. Footsteps. Coming up the stairs. I was out of bed in seconds, running into Daniel's room, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone as I texted my neighbor Jessica. "Call the cops, someone is in my house." I held Daniel close. He stirred slightly but didn't wake up. Then, the doorknob turned. I squeezed my eyes shut, holding my breath. It rattled again, harder. And then suddenly, silence. The police arrived 6 minutes later. By the time they got there, the house was ransacked. Drawers pulled out, cabinets open, but there was no sign of forced entry. The back door, still locked. The windows, still latched. Almost like whoever was inside had a key. I told the police everything. About the outage, the electrician, the pictures, the van. One of the officers checked the security logs for my cameras. They had been disabled at exactly 2:58 a.m., remotely. When they tried to verify Elite Electrical's business records, they found nothing. No listings. No employee named Adam. He didn't exist. When my husband got home 2 days later, I told him everything. The power outage. The man calling himself Adam. The photos. The sounds. The door. He just looked around the house, quiet, like he was seeing it with new eyes, and then he said, "Let's get out of here." We decided to move the following month, packed everything up and didn't look back. I still think about the man with no company name, no ID or logo, and it still creeps me out. Now I won't let anyone in, not unless they come highly recommended by someone I trust. Babysitting was easy money. I had been doing it since I was 16, and by the time I hit college, I had a handful of regular families that trusted me. The Petersons were one of them. A sweet couple, 2 well-behaved kids, and a cozy 2-story house in the kind of neighborhood where people left their doors unlocked during the day. That night, the last night I ever babysat, was nothing out of the ordinary. It was summer. A warm, breezy Saturday evening in Seattle, and the Petersons were heading out to celebrate their anniversary. Ella, their 8-year-old, and Jackson, their 6-year-old, were easy to handle. We had a simple routine: dinner, a movie, and then bedtime by 9. The night was quiet, peaceful even. until I noticed the car parked across the street. It was just sitting there. Engine running, headlights off. I thought it was just someone hanging around for a neighbor. No big deal, probably someone waiting for a friend. I glanced out the window again, and yeah, it was still there. Still not moving, just watching, and it made my stomach twist a little. I distracted myself with the kids, tucking them into bed, making sure they were settled. But when I walked back downstairs and looked outside again, the car was still there. An hour had passed. I tried to shake the unease creeping up my spine. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just letting my imagination get to me. But my gut was telling me something was wrong. The Petersons got home around 11:15 p.m., a little buzzed from dinner and happy as ever. I thought about mentioning the car, but at the last second, I stopped myself. I had no real reason to bring it up. It wasn't illegal to sit in your car, and I didn't want to sound paranoid. So I pocketed the cash Mrs. Peterson handed me, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The second I stepped onto the porch, I noticed the car again. It hadn't moved. I walked to my own car, trying not to make it obvious that I was looking. As I climbed into the driver's seat, I paused before turning the ignition, pretending to check my phone. I looked up at the rearview mirror. The car pulled out right after me. My pulse kicked up. I told myself it was a coincidence. It had to be. But then I switched lanes and they did too. I slowed down. So did they. I turned down an unfamiliar side street. They followed. This wasn't a coincidence. They were following me. My apartment complex wasn't far, but there was no way in hell I was driving straight home. I took random turns, circled a few blocks, hoping they'd get bored and drive off. But every time I looked at the mirror, the car was still there. When I finally saw an opportunity, a yellow light turning red, I gunned it through the intersection. The car behind me slammed on its brakes. For the first time in 10 minutes, they didn't follow. I took a sharp left, sped up for a few blocks, and turned down a narrow residential street. I pulled into a driveway and killed my headlights, heart hammering. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Nothing. They were gone. I let out a shaky breath and pulled back onto the road, heading straight for home. I was done for the night. Or so I thought. By the time I pulled into my parking spot, my nerves had settled. My complex was quiet, most of the lights in the units already out. I climbed out of my car, keeping my keys in hand, and hurried inside. The moment the door shut behind me, I locked it. Deadbolt. Chain. I stood there for a second, listening. Nothing. I shook my head at myself. I had let some random car freak me out for no reason. I needed to calm down. And then, knocking. The sound was so soft that for a second I thought I had imagined it. Then I heard it again. I stood completely still, not moving an inch, barely breathing. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't heard anyone walk up to my door. Slowly, I stepped closer. My phone was still in my hand, my fingers hovering over the screen as I unlocked it. I didn't know if I should call the cops or just wait. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was nothing. And then, a whisper, right outside the door. "I know you're in there." My stomach turned to ice. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen, my back pressed against the wall. The whisper came again. "I saw you." I wanted to throw up. My thumb pressed against the screen of my phone, and I dialed 911 as quietly as I could. "911, what's your emergency?" My voice barely came out. "There's someone outside my apartment, knocking, whispering to me." "Do you see them?" I didn't want to look, but I knew I had to. I inched toward the peephole, my heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't see a face, just a dark hoodie, pulled low, and he was standing too close to the door, angled in a way that made it impossible to see his face. like he knew exactly where the edge of the peephole was. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and do not open the door. The knocking stopped. Then, footsteps. Slow. Moving toward the side of the apartment. Then to the back patio door. Then, silence. I clamped my hand over my mouth, terrified he was close enough to hear me breathing. I don't know how long I stood there, my entire body tense, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. Then, finally, sirens. I didn't move until I saw the red and blue lights flashing through the curtains. When the cops arrived, the man was gone. They searched the area but found nothing. But here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. The officer checked my front door. There was no sign of forced entry. But the lock, it had been tampered with. Like someone had tried unlocking it from the outside. I didn't sleep at all that night. And a month later, I saw him again. I was at a coffee shop near campus, sitting by the window when I felt someone watching me. I looked up, and there he was, across the street, inside his car, staring at me. Before I could react, he pulled out and disappeared. If these stories made you double-check your locks, hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves a good scare. Got your own terrifying home invasion story? Drop it in the comments or email me. I need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another nightmare. Home is supposed to be safe, but sometimes the real horror is already inside. Stay safe, stay alert, and remember, always trust your gut. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.